Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Mark Flaherty. I'm in marketing, and with me is Katie Rusi. We're going to start with just one introductory slide. And if we could switch it over to the other monitor. Okay, so we just have one slide just to give you the highlights and a few URLs that you can go to. The main headline of the release is the introduction of the native apps for iOS and Android. And then we've got further enhancements in HTML5 too for those non-iOS and Android devices, as well as desktops that don't use Flash. And then there are several other enhancements, about a dozen or so, that Katie's going to highlight in the show and tell portion of the webinar. And you had this link in your email invitation, but the release notes, including a link to the even more granular detail of other enhancements, can be found on our website. Probably the fastest way to find them is to search 12.0 in the search box. Another key date is when the GA is, and that's going to be next Friday. That'll also be the date for when the native apps go into the respective app stores. And also useful are the upgrade instructions, which you can find on our website. Again, it'll be one of the first results if you just search 12.0. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Katie, and she'll start up the demo portion. If you have any questions during the presentation, of course, just type them in the panel on the lower right, and we'll answer some of them on the fly and save others for the end. We're scheduled for half an hour, and if that's all the time you have, then definitely just drop off at the half-hour mark. We'll be around in case there are extra questions to go a little bit longer. Okay?
So for our 12.0 new features, we wanted to start off with just talking to some of the enhancements that are available before doing a little show and tell with the HTML5, as well as a little emulator to show what the native app can be like for your end users. So there have been a few changes applied that are enhancements to the Enterprise Manager interface. The major one is the creation and management of materialized views is now going to be in a singular location instead of on the individual dashboard level, which will allow for both creation and management of materialized views. And alongside of that, that also goes along with the materialized view sharing. So whenever you have more than one dashboard that's leveraging what would be the same exact materialized view, it'll actually be one singular file instead of being in multiple files as it originally was. Also with the color theming throughout our default portal, we're going to have just one default setting with all customization done through CSS files instead of having just some certain different fixed default options. We have deprecated a handful of features. Main deprecations is the derived query option for creating queries. All already created derived queries will continue to function normally, but for the queries you would just be doing in just the new query creator instead of in the derived query option. And the user-defined range and condition features in the data worksheets has been deprecated as well. You'll still be able to have standard filtering conditions as well as standardized parameters and everything like that, but those two extra modular elements have also been deprecated. For some of the major enhancements that are really nice to speak to is that there have been script functions that have been put in for date conversions to fiscal calendar dates, which has been a great request for those that have custom fiscal years that do not match the calendar year, that we now have specific handling for doing that through script functions. With the user portal and Enterprise Enterprise Manager, they're now allowing alerts based off of the highlight conditions and reports and dashboards, where you can very easily access a highlight condition and basically check to see if that highlight condition is met to then trigger off an alert. One of the big enhancements for utilizing cube data is that cube data can now be pulled into data worksheets and used within data mashups. So that is a major step forward for bringing the cube data side by side with all of your other data sources. Within the data worksheet as well, many times you can have multiple data blocks that you don't necessarily want end users accidentally using. You really want them to use maybe the final transformed data block. So we have a simple option that you can set on data blocks and worksheets to have them visible when developing dashboards versus not visible when developing dashboards. That way you can hide all of the base data blocks. That way only the final data block is listed when you're developing out a dashboard. There's been some enhancements into report design for table grouping and aggregation. There's a nice little interface now built into the main properties panel instead of being built only into certain right-click options. And one of the nice things about view sheets into reports, there is now more advanced functionality for doing shared filters between the two when you're setting up those hyperlinks. Editable tables and view sheets now support hidden columns as well as cell formatting, so that gives a really nice enhancement to that raw table viewing, that you can have your cell formatting on things like your date columns that was restricted previously. You can also programmatically set the width and height within script for view sheet tables and crosstabs, which allows it to have a lot more flexibility and control of the table itself and the table rendering as you would normally have within reports. There is also an auto-select functionality that was put in for the children's selection when you have your ID-based iterative hierarchy within selection trees. That's a nice enhancement feature. The repository tree, for those that are going to have, say, admin access, can do additional drag and drop operations and provide context menu options for deleting and renaming assets instead of having to go directly into Enterprise Manager. Some of the major changes in view sheet design that we'll be highlighting, something that I can showcase you here actually, is that when you go to email an export of a dashboard, one of the great things that you can do with the content is you can include a link that will take the user directly back to the dashboard. They will, of course, be prompted to log into the portal, so they would only be able to see that dashboard if they have permission. But the as link is, a new functionality that has been, requested by different customers to be able to have that URL directly included within the scheduled task or just directly send email. So this also goes alongside with those tasks that are scheduled to send out email dashboard attachment as well. Some of the newer functionality that we'll be highlighting is assets like the gauges now having a data tip view. We also have some general changes to the portal, which you'll see while I'm here within just my flash viewing area, that we now have by default the deploy dashboard area pinned up, and we have just a nice new look and feel to the main design page, as well as general look and feel to the portal upgrade itself. Moving into the main focus of our demo, we have put in functionality for HTML5 that is more advanced than what was previously available in 11.5. Originally in 11.5, what we would do is we would detect whether or not the device you were accessing your dashboard on supported Flash, and if it did not support Flash, we would render in HTML5. Now what it will detect is it will detect whether or not Flash is installed. So for companies that do not allow for Flash to be installed, it will detect that there's no Flash even on desktop and laptop type access, and it will automatically render in HTML5 for the users. So you'll get a simple HTML5 view. You still have the ability to do your explicit filters or really nice interactivity like your brushing. Sorry guys, I think I let my dashboard become a little bit unresponsive there. I'm going to go ahead and clear that brushing. There we go. That refreshed my browser session. Sorry about that. So you can see you can still do your nice different selections for zooming in, doing the show details, all of that that you would be able to do within the Flash is now also supported within your HTML5 in-browser rendering. You can see what our 12.0 features dashboard would look like within the HTML5. Some of the great feature talking points for just dashboard enhancements in general is that tables are now supporting presenters. So you can see here that we have just a simple box presenter within our table there. If we want to move on to our emulator that's going to simulate what it's like to be within the mobile app, we'll be able to see here that we have our 12.0 features dashboard up and running. This will still have the interactivity just like the HTML5, and you can imagine that my pointer is just like my finger. So one of the new functionalities built into dashboards is the ability to select when you're allowing to select up to day level. Instead of selecting, a week at a time or an individual day, you can select a day of the week for that particular month. So it's going to go ahead and it's going to restrict it to only Wednesdays for May. What you'll notice is that when you've selected something, you get a nice little menu for clearing, for making changes on that particular element. For our range sliders, you can now filter on aggregate expressions. So here I have my aggregate expression. I'm not actually changing something like price or looking at individual line items quantity purchase. I'm looking at the overall quantity purchase here in my range. So I'm actually changing the set of bars that I'm able to see by changing my date range, by changing my range here. One of the great functionalities that's been added is the ability to have a group container with elements such as selection lists, but this could be any container that you set up. It can be set to be in on-click for text elements. So when you can imagine that you click on it with your finger, and then you can make selections within, sorry, my mouse over. I can make my selections and I can apply. So as you can imagine, when I'm making that selection with my finger, it makes for easy application of the filters and then easy clearing of the filters. One of the things built into our formula table within the dashboards is now the ability to reference cells when doing calculations. So this is going to merge our freehand table into more of a standard report formula table. So this total field is actually referencing these two cells. This will allow for more advanced calculations and more advanced tabular layouts to be within the dashboard as they had already existed within the tabular report. I can even go back to maybe my main portal tree. You'll see a nice neat list of folders here and individual dashboards that maybe I want to select and go to. So you can see that the navigation is very nice when you want to have, say, additional options. For doing the filters, even with the drag and drop range slider for date ranges, it's going to still behave the same with each of your charts updating. So you can see that the users will be able to navigate between folders into the different folders that they happen to have permissions. They will, of course, be prompted to log in, so it will still leverage the login security that is expected. For them to get the app, there will actually be two different modes of getting this app for the installation. For iOS, they will need to go through the store to download the app, and then they will be able to put in the URL that they access your repository through, put that in, put in their username and password, and access the repository. For the Android devices, the Android devices allow for direct link trigger downloading of applications. So they will actually be able to go to your portal and they'll be able to select a link within the portal because it will detect that they are on a mobile device and auto trigger a download and install of the application, in being then able to put in the credentials to connect, just like on the iOS. It's going to be the same types of credentials. Everything from the prompting is the same. They have the same look and feel to them, give or take minor differences due to the device differences. But the interactivity is going to be very similar to the HTML5 in that when you select on a certain element, you're given a menu of options to be able to select from, and then within that menu you have then to be able to clear things that you've selected, make other selections, and you can imagine that you can now do this with these nice large icons for simple finger selection when making those selections. That's highlighting a lot of the new functionality that we've had within the interactive dashboards in general, some general speaking points to other product feature enhancements, and taking a look a little bit at what the mobile app will look like from an end user standpoint when installed on a mobile device. Realize this is on an emulator, on my actual laptop. So there are, some slight differences there in the behavior, as you can see, because you're seeing my mouse moving instead of an actual virtual finger clicking. But aside from that, you can make your selections, you can filter, you can interact with your dashboards, and instead of having it be in a web browser on your mobile device, it'll be able to be on a native app. I think at this point we would like to open up for questions. Within the GoToMeeting webinar, there is a question area where you can type in questions that we can then speak to, or maybe we can even answer individually if we have a large volume of questions. Of course, if you find that you have questions about specific features, there is the full release notes about different major enhancements that is going to be available on the website, so you can read about more of those features in detail. And you can, of course, reach out to your account manager who can direct you to more documentation that we may have and more information to answer any questions you have about the product enhancements.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions here that look like they're customer specific, so we'll do those offline. But here's one that's more general. Do I need to upgrade my server installation for the mobile apps to work?
Yes, you will need to upgrade the environment that the users are accessing to allow them to access on the mobile device. So if, as from a development standpoint, you want to, and you have a test server license key, you can access those on the mobile device, so you can choose to upgrade a test server with a test server license key and do your testing on the mobile devices from there. One of the great functionalities built into the app is the ability to have it pointing to more than one environment that you choose from in a list. So this way you can, from your developer standpoint, who are working with your test server, they can point to your test server and then point to the production. But you will need to upgrade your production installation specifically to 12.0 for them to be able to use those applications. I would like to say that with the developer key, you will still have the restriction of only being able to access that locally. So you'd be able to test, say, the HTML5 viewing within the web browser, but not the mobile app.
Okay, another one is, will the look and feel of the web app look like the mobile app that you are showing now, or will it be the same as before?
So this will not change in terms of when you're accessing within the web browser. It will be our default, again, our default portal is going to have one standard look and feel that you can then customize through CSS. So when you're accessing the default portal within the web browser, it will have that same generalized look and feel as when you're accessing on your desktop or on your laptop. It is only within the mobile app that you have more of this interface with, the blue interface going back and forth with the new folders and the new icons.
But there have been some cosmetic changes to the web app, right?
Yes, there have been some enhancements done, but they do not mirror the same icons that you're seeing in the mobile app.
All right. Another one is 12.0 backwardly compatible to earlier versions? If not, what does migration look like?
You would always be able to pull in any dashboards and reports that you've already created within an 11.5 or previous versions of the software. We always do backwards compatibility testing, and of course, if you would to find any discrepancy for that, our product team is more than happy to work with you to make sure we resolve that issue, which is why we always suggest that you do testing within your development environment before upgrading your production environment. In terms of the upgrade itself, we do have with the release notes also upgrade notes for any specific changes, just like we had for 11.5 and previous releases. If there was a change to certain default files that maybe are no longer needed for portal rendering and things like that, any files that should be removed, changed, or updated will be listed in those upgrade notes for the 12.0, and those should be available on the website.
Okay, another one. Is there an option to make the dashboard in HTML5 versus Flash?
So you can always access the HTML5 through adjusting the URL link slightly as well for that, versus if you wanted to forcibly render in HTML5 over rendering in Flash instead of having to have it detect that you do not have Flash installed.
Another one is about the official release date, which is next Friday, the 26th. And then one more, is the Visual Composer tool still available in 12.0? I didn't see it when you went to design.
So the web-based Visual Composer, the reason why you didn't notice it within design is actually because we have done a little bit of a facelift to the design tab. So this create dashboard being a little bit more of an intuitive labeling, just like deploy dashboard. So instead of selecting this as dashboard, you have deploy dashboard to just get into more of, adding a new dashboard to your list of dashboards that you have on your dashboard tab, and the create dashboard is the link to the web-based Visual Composer. Visual Composer will continue to require Flash to be installed for use, but again, for end users that are not allowed to have the HTML5 installed in their environment, it will automatically detect that they do not have the Flash installed and will render an HTML5 for them.
Do HTML5 users have the live edit capabilities of a chart?
What you will see when you're in the HTML5 that you do not have the ability to do the live edit, the swapping of fields. You have more of a standard end user interactivity in terms of brushing, zooming, show details, show data, maximizing the chart, seeing the tool tips, being able to do multi-select to simulate holding like the control button. That same thing goes for the native app as well. You'll have the same similar selections that you have within the HTML5 for triggering off a multi-select clicking and so on.
Okay, good. Okay, so it looks like that's it for the questions we have that we can handle in the group, and the rest we'll do offline. So if there are any questions that do come up that are more general ones, you can send them to marketing@InetSoft.com, but otherwise best to follow up with your account manager for more specific questions for your environment and deployment. And also remember this has been recorded, and the email with the link to it will be going out in a few days' time, probably midweek next week. So you'll be able to share that, or if you weren't here, play it back. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good weekend.